For 3 standard cycles, I've shared my living quarters with the human JAX. My posting aboard the freighter Stardust Drifter was supposed to be a mission of quiet observation. It was a chance for the Kahar Collective to gather data on this peculiar, soft-skinned species that had only recently stumbled onto the galactic stage. As the ship's main engineering tech, JAX was my designated subject. And for 3 cycles, my reports back to the homeworld were, well, unremarkable. He was a creature of simple, almost primitive routines. His days were a predictable loop of running system diagnostics, eating nutrient paste, and social interactions that completely lacked the complex psionic harmony of my own people. His most baffling habit, though, was his attachment to ancient things. In an age of plasma cutters and sonic welders, JAX kept a collection of physical tools that belonged in a museum. His favorite was a sharpened piece of metal he called a knife. He said it was an heirloom, passed down through his family. Every cycle, at the end of his shift, he'd sit on his bunk and perform a maintenance ritual, rubbing it with scented oils and sliding a coarse stone along its edge. I found it charming, a quaint little quirk of a less developed species clinging to its past. An eccentricity. Harmless. I was wrong. I was catastrophically, apocalyptically wrong. The ritual began just as it always did. JAX sat under the soft glow of his bunk lamp, the sheep's life support, humming its familiar lullaby. He held the blade in his hands. It was about the length of his forearm, a single piece of dark, matte steel. He worked with a focused calm, his movements practiced, fluid. It was a mundane task he'd probably done 1,000 times. A form of meditation. I watched from my alcove, my multifaceted eyes taking in the scene, getting ready to log another entry on human sentimentality. But then, the light caught the blade at a different angle. And for the very first time, I saw it. The steel wasn't smooth. It was covered in them. Emblems. My first thought was that they were decorative. Art. The primitive mind often tries to beautify its tools, to give functional objects some kind of aesthetic value. It was a known trait among dozens of new spacefaring cultures. We Kahar had long ago evolved past the need for physical decorations. We find beauty in the perfect symmetry of a mathematical proof or the flawless logic of a well-executed strategy. But for humans, beauty seemed to be something you could hold, something you could scratch into the surface of your world. JAX was meticulous. He used a soft cloth, rubbing the blade in slow, circular motions. There was a reverence in his actions, a level of care you might reserve for a sacred object or a fragile baby. To him, this thing was clearly more than just a tool. I had previously logged this behavior as a form of ancestral worship, a common stage for species grappling with concepts like linear time and mortality. Humans, with their tragically short lives, are obsessed with legacy. This knife, I theorized, was just a physical symbol of that obsession, a link to the past they felt slipping away. He hummed a low, tuneless melody, a series of notes my audio sensors struggled to classify. It was another one of his quirks. Where a Kahar might contemplate in silence, JAX filled the void with noise. Everything about him was inefficient, analog, and steeped in a biology that seemed unrefined. His species sweated. They needed long periods of total unconsciousness just to function. They communicated with flapping mouthparts and crude vibrations of air. And yet, somehow, they had built starships. It was a paradox that had puzzled the galaxy since they showed up. They were clumsy, illogical apes who'd somehow managed to split the atom and bend space-time. Looking at JAX, so lost in his simple task, I felt a wave of what his people might call pity. He was a child playing with his father's old toys, unaware of the vast, complex universe he was now part of, a universe he was so clearly unequipped to handle. Curiosity, a less refined cousin of scientific inquiry, got the better of me. I shifted in my alcove, letting my optical sensors zoom in on the knife. The markings weren't just random scratches. They were precise, deliberate, tiny, intricate symbols covered nearly every millimeter of the blade. My internal databanks, linked to the galactic concordance of symbology, began to whir, trying to find a match. The first emblem my translator locked onto was near the hilt. It was a stylized, massive sea creature, its mouth gaping to show rows of serrated teeth. My translator flickered, struggling. The entry it gave back was fragmented, corrupted by layers of cultural context it couldn't understand. Keyword: shark, great, white, threat level, planetary, apex, aquatic, human interaction. Eradication? No, correction, supremacy. Hunted to near extinction for sport, resources, and territorial dominance. I tried to process the data. Territorial dominance over an aquatic predator? It made no sense. Humans are a land-based species. Why would they care about the hierarchy of their oceans? Maybe the translation was flawed. My focus shifted to another symbol, halfway up the blade. This one was a heavy, furred beast, standing on its hind legs with claws out. It was drawn with immense power, a creature of ice and snow. Keyword: bear, polar, threat level, planetary apex, Arctic, human interaction. Competition: outcompeted for resources, hunted for pelts, for status. Now classified as a managed species. Contained in designated preserves. Managed? They managed an apex predator? It was illogical. Apex species, by their very definition, are not managed. They are the managers. They sit at the top of their ecosystem. The data had to be wrong. Humans, with their soft skin and blunt teeth, couldn't have possibly subjugated a creature that was, by all rights, their evolutionary superior in its environment. I scanned another emblem. This one a sleek, striped feline, coiled like it was about to pounce. My translator returned the result faster this time, as if it was starting to recognize a horrifying pattern. Keyword: tiger, Siberian, threat level, planetary apex, forest tundra, human interaction, culling, systematically hunted due to predation on human livestock and expansion into human territory. Numbers reduced by 95%. Now a protected but subordinate species. My internal cooling fans began to spin faster. Subordinate. The word was alien in this context. You don't make a tiger subordinate. You avoid it. You build walls. You give it territory. You do not, with sharpened sticks and later explosive chemical projectiles, declare yourself its master. It was a violation of the natural order. JAX must have sensed me staring. He paused his cleaning, tilting his head. "Something on your mind, Zyla?" he asked. His voice was friendly, completely oblivious to the existential crisis unfolding in my crystalline mind. I couldn't form a real response. I just gestured with one of my upper manipulators toward the blade. The markings I managed through my vocalizer. They are not just for decoration. JAX looked down at the knife and then he smiled. It was a wide, toothy expression that most species in the galaxy find deeply unsettling. A predator's smile. Decorative? Nah, he chuckled. Not at all. This is a history book. He held the knife up, angling it into the light. This one, he said, his thumb brushing over the tiny carving of the shark, is for the great white. For thousands of years, they were the undisputed masters of Earth's oceans, kings of the deep. When we were still paddling around in flimsy wooden boats, they were a nightmare made real. A shadow in the water that meant death. He paused, a distant look in his eyes. So, he continued, in a matter-of-fact tone that sent a chill through my core, we conquered the oceans. We built bigger boats out of metal. We invented tools to hunt them, to track them. We pulled them from their kingdom and killed them, not just for safety, but to prove that the water belonged to us. Now too. We decided who lived and who died in our planet's oceans. This mark isn't for a single kill, Zyla. It's a symbol for the taming of a world's seas. My manipulators began to tremble on my data slate. This wasn't worship. This was a trophy. Not a personal trophy, but a species-wide declaration of conquest. JAX moved his thumb to the bear. And this is the Lord of the Arctic. The polar bear. A creature evolved to thrive in a place that would kill a lone human in minutes. Stronger than us, faster than us in its element. They feared nothing. His smile tightened. So we learned to kill the cold itself. We made fire, built mobile shelters, wore the skins of other animals. Then we invented long-range projectile weapons. We hunted the bear from a distance where its strength meant nothing. We proved that no environment on our planet was too harsh for us to claim, and no creature too mighty for us to bring to heel. He spoke about it like it was a simple farming report. The breathtaking arrogance of it was matched only by the terrifying truth that they'd actually done it. They didn't adapt to their world. They forced their world to adapt to them. He pointed to the tiger. The silent hunters of the forests, masters of camouflage and ambush. For generations, they were a constant threat to our villages. He sighed, a strange sound of what I now recognized as nostalgia. But we are better monsters. We cleared the forests, turned them into farmland. We hunted the tigers not just for safety, but for their beauty. We loved them so much, we almost wiped them out completely. We reduced the planet's deadliest land carnivore to a symbol on a crest, a pet in a cage. We decided their existence was contingent on our approval. One by one, he walked me through the Blade's horrific encyclopedia. A crocodile, the ancient terror of the rivers, now a source for luxury leather goods. A wolf, the legendary pack hunter, now domesticated into a subservient companion that guarded the very livestock it once preyed upon. An eagle, the master of the skies, now a national emblem stamped on the money used to buy the land it once sought over, but the emblems weren't just animals. I started to see other markings. A mushroom-shaped cloud, a stylized strand of DNA, a shattered atom. JAX didn't explain those. He didn't have to. My translator, now fully grasping the horrifying context, provided the definitions with brutal clarity. They had not only conquered their planet's biosphere, they had conquered the laws of physics. They had turned the building blocks of life and matter into weapons. This knife wasn't a history book. It was a final report. It was the story of how one species of clever, violent apes had systematically dismantled every single threat to their dominance, be it claw, tooth, or the fundamental forces of the universe. I pulled back into the shadows of my alcove. My internal processes were screaming. I looked at JAX at his soft hands, his exposed neck, his total lack of natural armor or weapons. And I saw the most dangerous creature I had ever encountered. The galaxy is filled with warrior races, species with exoskeletons, venomous stingers, and psionic abilities that can boil a brain in its skull. They posture and threaten, displaying their power, their horns, their claws, their mighty fleets. The humans did none of that. They were quiet, polite. They offered trade agreements and cultural exchanges. The galaxy had classified them as harmless, curious, maybe a little weak. And now I knew why. It was the quiet confidence of a creature that has already won the only war that ever mattered, the war for its own planet. They had fought monsters for 1,000,000 years, and they had won so decisively that their deadliest predators were now just carvings on an old knife. They have no need to posture. They have no need to threaten. When you've systematically defeated every apex predator your world can produce, the rest of the galaxy looks less like a threat and more like a collection of interesting new species. 2. Manage. JAX finally seemed to notice my silence. He put the knife away, sliding it into a leather scabbard. "You all right there, buddy? You look like you've seen a ghost." I looked at him, the simple engineer, the man who hummed while he cleaned his old knife. And I saw the ghost. I saw the ghost of every creature that had ever stood in the way of humanity. I saw the ghost of a world that had been utterly and completely conquered. In that moment, I understood that the Kahar Collective hadn't sent me to observe a primitive species. They had sent me to live in a cage with a sleeping god, and I could only pray that we never, ever gave it a reason to wake up. My next report to the homeworld will be very different. No more notes on quaint rituals or primitive tools. There will be only one single urgent warning: we are not the apex. We have made a catastrophic miscalculation. We are sharing the stars with a species that fought its gods, its monsters, and its own world and won. And they have the receipts carved into their blades. If you enjoyed this look into the terrifying side of humanity, let us know in the comments, and be sure to follow for more stories from the great and often frightening galactic expanse.